Hi, it's Daphne. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to tell you about all the books I read in February. So first, we can start off with statistics. So I read 1 3-star, 2 4-stars, and 2 5-stars for a total of 5 books. That's not a ton for me. It's still a good amount of books, but I was in a bit of a reading slump in the beginning of February, and I struggled to get through one book in particular, and it kind of threw off my February. Plus, I was reading a long book, so I only got to 5 books this month, but I got 2 5-stars, so that's still very successful. Out of those 5 books, 4 were romances and 1 was a nonfiction. Out of those 4 romances, 2 were historical, 1 was contemporary, and 1 was a fantasy. Starting off with Wild Rain by Beverly Jenkins. This is a historical Black love romance, and the first book I read by Beverly Jenkins. I was really excited to give her a try. So this book is about Garrett and Spring. Garrett is a news reporter back out east. Spring is like a rancher in California, but Garrett comes all the way out to California to do an interview on Spring's brother, who's a doctor, and he thought it'd make a very interesting story for his paper, so he traveled all the way out there to meet him. But there's like a storm, and he gets saved by Spring, and they get to know each other, and it's like their love story. Spring is very different than any of the women he's seen before. She's very like manly for this time. She runs her own ranch. She like takes care of business. She wears pants, which is like a big deal apparently. And she's tough and like isn't looking for a man. She can handle her own shit. She can handle her own business. And he finds this fascinating. However, I just really struggled with this book. I could not get over the writing style in this. For me, this particular book by Beverly Jenkins felt very like stilted in the way it was written. It was like it lacked that floweriness that I enjoy. I felt no emotions because everything was so to the point. It was like, he looked at her. She felt happy. I mean, let me just fucking give you an example. They're hanging out. This is like early, so I'm not spoiling anything. And it reads, "They finished their stew at about the same time. Do you want more?" she asked. He nodded and made a move to rise. She stopped him. "You're still favoring that leg. I'll get it." She brought their second helping back to the table, acknowledged his thanks with a short nod, and asked him, "Did the tea help?" "It did. There's more if you want it." "I do." Like, that just feels weird to me, and I didn't enjoy reading this style of writing. So it took me a really long time to get through this. It really like clogged up my reading for February in the beginning of the month, and I got maybe like about halfway through the book before I gave up trying to read it physically and just borrowed the audiobook off my library and listened to the other half on audio at like not 2 times, but like more than 1 time speed, so I could kind of like follow along with my eyes, and it was just getting me through it faster because I can listen and understand and keep my eyes on it faster than I can like read it myself. And then after a while I was just like playing games on my phone while I was listening. I mean, the story was like interesting at times. There's a lot of racial shit going on as well. There's like this really scummy guy that is part of Spring's past, and he's just trash and he's stirring up trouble. So that was a little stressful, but it kept like the plot kind of interesting. But I also wanted to read like a fun romance, and that was like taking the fun away. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. So the next book I'm going to talk about is Bound to the Battle God by Ruby Dixon. This is a romantic fantasy story. So this book is about Faith and Aaron. Faith is just a contemporary woman who happened to like fall through a portal into this new world where this guy, Aaron, is a god. Aaron is on Earth, and Faith and him join up for this like mission he has to do. I don't want to spoil it, but they're like connected now. Faith thinks that he can help her get back to her world, and Aaron needs Faith to help him complete this mission. And it's their romance. He's this like arrogant god. He doesn't care about humanity that much. He's kind of a jerk, but he's obviously super hot, and it's their love story and how Faith brings more humanity into him and stuff. And it was kind of sweet at times. Like, I had a good time, but this book is super long. I felt like it was like 600 plus pages or whatever. It was a little bit longer than I felt was necessary. I thought the concept of this book was really cool. It's quite adventurous. There's a lot of like travel and meeting new characters and battles and stuff. their gods in this world and how everything works was fun to learn about. And the romance was steamy and compelling, but just too long. So I might read more books in this series, but I'm not in a rush, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then I read Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. This is the first book in the Hoops series. I really wanted to focus on reading books by Black authors this month, and I know Kennedy Ryan has some really successful books, but I wasn't really ready to jump into Real yet. I just still am kind of stuck on like the weird actor-director relationship in that book, so I skipped it and decided to try out another one of Kennedy Ryan's books, Long Shot. This is like a sports romance, and did I go in with no expectations and was totally shocked and traumatized by a lot of the things that happen in this book. You should know if you're gonna pick up this book, it has a very good, compelling romance for sure, but there's hella trigger warnings for like domestic violence and abuse, and it's all on page. So this book is about Iris and August. They're the couple you're rooting for, but this book is also a lot about Iris's boyfriend at the time, Caleb. He is trash. He's so horrible and such like a monster. I was like, what did I get myself into? I am scared. I'm horrified. But like I had to keep pushing through even though I was like not having fun because it was so like thriller movie, but I had to keep going because I needed things to get better. You know, I needed things to work out for Iris. I was like so stressed trying to read this book. To give you like context on what's going on in the story, Iris meets August at a bar. They're young, they're like, August is about to go into the draft, he's just finishing up his college career. So they're both like 22. They meet at a bar, they have like an instant connection, and August goes to try to kiss her and she's like, I can't, I have a boyfriend. Her boyfriend is Caleb. He's also an NBA like draft star or whatever, and Caleb and August have always been rivals. Turns out Caleb is a manipulative asshole, and a lot of shit goes down in this book where he keeps Iris to himself. Like he's just like trapping her, and there's like I said, the trigger warnings. I'm not explaining myself well, but this book is amazing too. I gave it 5 stars even though I was like dying on the inside reading it. The love story is about Iris and August and how like Iris is trying to survive the situation she's in, and how August just loves her from a distance, and like them trying to be together, but like Iris has so much going on because of all the terrible things happening around her that Caleb is inflicting on her. I would be reading this book like lying in bed. It'd be midnight or something, and I would get to a part that was just so frustrating and like heart-wrenching. This book was heart-wrenching, that I would have to like jump out of bed and pace around the apartment due to stress and anxiety about what was happening to Iris. So I definitely want to continue this series. I believe Kennedy Ryan even says herself that the next books in the series aren't like triggering like the first one is. So I'm excited to see what happens with the other characters that were introduced in the first book in a more like chill, not horrifying manner, because I really did enjoy Kennedy Ryan's writing style. I would have jumped right into the second book, but like I said, I was trying to read books by Black authors with Black characters and stuff like that, but the second book doesn't have a black main character, I don't believe. It's definitely a white guy, and I think it's a Hispanic woman. So I decided to put that down and prioritize my other Black books. But yeah, I would recommend Long Shot only if you're up for the trigger warnings. Then I read Destiny's Embrace by Beverly Jenkins. This book was much improved over Wild Rain. I read this book much faster, had a much better experience. So this book is between Mariah and Logan. Mariah lives in Philadelphia. Logan lives out on a ranch in California. There was a similar setting in this book as was in Wild Rain, but this book is older, I believe, but it was written in a way that I enjoyed much better. So anyway, Mariah lives out east, and she has quite a miserable life. She looks different than the people in her community. She's more fair-skinned. She has like hazel eyes, and the kids would tease her, call her witch hazel eyes. Her mom is like so mean to her. She does not care about her at all. She just always talks down to her and just bosses her around. And now she's like 30, still living with her mom, still under her thumb, and she's just about had enough. She kind of had a relationship with this guy, but he was such like a spineless man to his mom that like he wouldn't marry her because his mom didn't like Mariah. Mariah finally stands up for her mom. Stuff goes down, and then she ends up moving to California because an opportunity to become a housekeeper arises. So she takes that opportunity, leaves her old life, and agrees to work as a housekeeper in Logan's home. Logan's stepmom set this up, so he wasn't like super excited to get a housekeeper. He thought once she saw his place, whoever this woman was, she would go running back home. But Mariah is like determined to change her own fate. She's like, I'm not gonna be a pushover anymore. So she really stands up to Logan and is like more of a spitfire, and there's like an instant connection that they have with each other, though Mariah isn't like trying to do anything. She's very professional, but like Logan is so intrigued by her, so attracted to her, even though he doesn't necessarily want to be. He's like trying to be like, I don't care, but like we all see. This one I felt was a more compelling story. The romance was much more fun, and there wasn't like any heavy like racial stuff going on or any like trigger warning stuff going on. So this was a nice breather after the other two Black romances that I read that were like very traumatizing. Not traumatizing, but were very like, had a lot of negative things going on. This was just like a nice, easy, enjoyable historical romance. The characters in this were really fun. His family, it's like on his family's ranch and stuff, so you meet, like I said, his stepmother, his brothers, the Native Americans that are in the community and things like that. So it was a really fun world, and I would continue the series for sure. I would definitely recommend this book. I gave it 4 stars. And then the last book I completed in February was Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. This is a nonfiction book about the caste systems around the world, focusing on the American caste system, as well as drawing comparisons to the caste systems during Nazi reign, as well as the caste systems in India. This book was very, very good, very interesting. I learned so much. I listened to this book via audio, which is something I plan to do going forward with nonfiction. I find it a nicer way for me personally to consume nonfiction books. Every day that I was listening to this, I always had something to take away and talk to my partner about, things that would just like frustrate me about society and things that were like eye-opening and just different ways to look at familiar problems. A heavy focus in this book is obviously the mistreatment of Black people in America and how it's not necessarily like a worldwide race thing. Like race isn't like really a thing. It's like a construct that people made up, right? It like doesn't make sense. Like I'm Black, I'm from African American descendants, originating in Africa, and this is my skin tone. But I could have the same exact shade as like an Indian person or a person in South America, right? It's like the color of your skin, by what I learned in this book and things that you can think about, is just like made up. Race is fucking made up. So it was really interesting, but like particularly how, because of slavery and all the horrible shit Black people were put through, we were put at the bottom of the caste system, and how that affects a lot of society, whether it's consciously or subconsciously here in the States. And I'm not gonna be able to tell you everything I learned in this book, but I 1000% recommend you read it. It talks a lot about how like people at the top of the caste system wanna keep their place at the top, and to do that, they have to keep people down. It talked a lot about the history and all the lynchings and things that happened in America, and just how like disgusting people were back then. They would treat some of these lynchings like the carnival. Like they would take pictures, smiling pictures with their children, and then send them via postcards. Just like I learned so many things that I either didn't already know or like forgot about from my high school education. Looking at things through Caste was very eye-opening and just made it more than just blatant racism. It even talks about people who don't think of themselves as racist, but how they could still like support the caste system without realizing it. So like assuming someone who's Black is working in a domestic field, you know what I'm saying? For example, if a Black neighbor goes to greet their new white neighbor and the white neighbor just assumes they're there to like pick up their laundry to take it to the dry cleaner or something. When they're like, no, I'm not a domestic worker. I'm your neighbor. I live in this very nice neighborhood as well. Like, why are you assuming that? You know, things like that. That would happen with people that don't think they're racist. Like, I don't know. I'm not gonna explain it well because I'm not a highly educated, informed woman like Isabel Wilkerson. So instead of listening to me talk about it, you should go read or listen to this book and learn directly from the source. But for me, I really felt I learned a lot from this book. And I would listen to it or read it again. I gave this book 5 stars. Like I said, highly, highly recommend everybody reading this book. That was a bit rambly. I don't even know if it made sense. But yeah. So the takeaway from February, like I said, I was really trying to focus on reading more Black authors, Black love, and I really enjoyed myself overall. I feel like that's something I want to continue to prioritize in my reading. It's kind of boring to just go back to reading only white stories, you know what I'm saying? There's so many other types of people out there. There's so many people that I'm realizing I can truly relate to, and not everything has to be made into a stereotype by like the media and shit, especially if it's own voices. I hope that makes sense. I'm a little rambly. It's a little bit of a touchy, self-conscious subject on my own part for not realizing this sooner, so please forgive me for my ignorance. I want to read more Black love, continue to do that, because there's great stuff out there. And our stories are beautiful and worth it, and the world isn't just white stories. So those are all the books I read in February. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below if you haven't already. And I'll catch you in another video. Bye!